Come on in, pull up a chair and take a load off, because today I'll be reviewing and paging through Axian Library, 4 old school essentials from Axian Spice. Is this compilation of 5 OSR zines promising to bring plenty of fun to your fantasy frolics? Or is it zine smeenes? This is certainly one library you don't want a card to. Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I'll be reviewing and paging through Axian Library, 4 old school essentials from Axian Spice. It's written by Giuseppe Rotondo with artwork provided by Igor Picarillo, Carlos Castillo, J.M. Wowiak, Heather Shin, Jack Bedishki, Daniel F. Walt Hall, Dennis McCarthy, and Yuri Perkowski Dominguez. And I apologize if I have butchered anybody's name there. This 134-page digest-size hardcover is available for an MSRP of $16.99, which includes the PDF over at DriveThruRPG, or you can get just the PDF alone for $9.99. All right, all that said, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got Axian Library. So before we jump on in, do want to mention the fine folks over at Axian Spice were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. And these days, it's important that you know that. Also want to mention that I believe 3 of the zines that are contained within were originally available as pay what you want over at DriveThruRPG. I believe that they have been expanded upon and fleshed out in far more detail than back then. This was a successful Kickstarter for Axian Spice, and that's how we get the little hardcover volume. Axian Library is a collection of 5 zines for old school essentials and other old school systems, featuring optional rules and dozens of tables to enhance your game. Contained within are Wondrous, Weavings, Warped and Weird, Mysteriously Missing and Merrily Met, Notable Novices and Notorious Newcomers, Pious Prayers and Powerful Prodigies, as well as Deadly Dragons Dire and Daunting. All right, let's hop on in. Even though this carries the Old School Essentials trade dress, keep in mind you can utilize these zines for any basic expert-based OSR game, any sort of retro clone along those lines. And of course, obviously enough, if you are playing basic or expert Dungeons and Dragons from back in the day, perfect for it as well. So the first thing we're going to dive into is Wondrous, Weavings, Warped and Weird, which happens to be alternate rules for arcane magic. And I'll be the first to point out, one of the things I've never been a huge fan of is Vancian magic in role-playing games, especially if you're looking to try to kind of simulate a sword and sorcery setting, or even kind of a fairy tale setting. To me, it just doesn't jive right. I mean, granted, if you are looking at, running a Dying Earth role-playing game, well, yeah, sure, that it's fine, but it's never been my thing. And with fantasy role-playing games, I've always used some sort of alternate rules for both arcane and divine magic users to make them a little more powerful in the beginning, and actually in some ways kind of tamp them down a little bit so that they don't completely outshine all the other character classes later on. So what you're looking at here is just some, I don't want to say major changes in the magic system that you might be utilizing, say from old school essentials, just some tweaks. So the process of memorizing spells, all that components, things like that, it's all the same. What you do change a bit is casting spells. So you've got options for ritual casting, where if the magic user actually has enough time and their spell book, they don't have to use a spell slot to cast a spell. So I dig that. I think that's pretty cool. We also have casting and the ability to retain spells. So it is possible for you to cast a spell and it's gone, or you fail to cast a spell and it's gone. But there are also options, the ability, I should say, for magic users to cast spells and have the ability to cast it again, which is something I actually do in my fantasy role-playing games. Rules are completely different. The way I approach it is completely different, but really do like what's going on with this. And also later on, we also have a bit of a rewrite of the divine magic in old school role-playing games as well. That is another zine that's contained in here. We'll take a peek at that in just a few moments. Something else that's really nice about this zine is that we've got the magical mishaps, which are a big deal with folks who play like Dungeon Crawl Classics. That's one of the selling points for DCC is their approach to magic. Very interesting, very cool. That really does have a sword and sorcery vibe to it. In some ways, I sort of get the feeling that the author of Axian Library may have drawn some inspiration from Dungeon Crawl Classics because of the magic zines as well as the dragon zine that's in here as well. Now, I'm not saying that the authors lifted anything or cribbed anything. No, not at all. I'm just saying I kind of get the feeling maybe they had some inspiration from it. And then again, maybe there was none at all. So we had the magical mishaps. We've got arcane wonders as well. So we do have an alternate table for mishaps because they can be pretty rough. And then our next zine is Mysteriously Missing and Merrily Met, which I thought this is kind of funny because you would use these story tables for players who were unable to make it to your last game session. So if Gary G wasn't able to show up, you've got these tables that you can roll on, and it's what was going on with the character when they weren't with you. And I think these are very, very interesting. Some of them are actually very cool that the player who didn't come actually gets some cool goodies. But something to point out is that a lot of people out there probably will not appreciate a random table just saying what happened to their character. So as an example, one of the entries is that they've been replaced by an evil doppelganger, and that player has to play their character as an evil doppelganger until it's discovered or it's killed. Some people don't like being told how they have to role play their characters. But I'll tell you what, there's just a lot of fun, interesting, story driving elements to these tables. And that's something that is throughout all of these zines. They're not just little mechanical entries. There's story building elements within all of it. That's why I think it'll go over very well with I was going to say a lot of people, and then some aspects of these zines probably will not be popular with other people. So your mileage may vary. Then we've got Notable Novices and Notorious Newcomers. Once again, more optional tables here. This time, it's for new characters and replacement characters. So one aspect of the old school that's very popular is when player characters have hirelings underlings, henchmen, what have you, and a character dies, a lot of times one of those hirelings will be promoted to being a player character. Well, what these tables allow you to do is give them background. What's your story? It's basically what this is. And there's also a table here for looted items that they might have available to them based on their class. Then the next zine is Pious Prayers and Powerful Prodigies. As I mentioned, as we were taking a look at the Arcane Magic zine, this is an alternate approach to divine casting and invoking prayers and divine disappointment and divine wrath. And this is a situation, once again, where the player character doesn't really memorize their spells. So unlike clerics in most OSR games, they're not sitting there memorizing specific spells. They have their entire level of spells available to them, but they have to pray. They have to use prayers in order to cast those spells, cast those prayers, essentially, and might succeed, might not succeed. You might piss off your deity. And I like this quite a bit. Once again, it's making your lower level magic users a little more powerful, but at the same time, kind of tamping down that power creep that comes into magic users at higher levels. So that's what we've got right here. We have divine relics as well. So we've got different holy items based on your alignment. So we've got quite a few tables there. And then we're going to wrap up with Deadly Dragons, Dire and Daunting, which is going to give dragons their due. And I say it all the time. I'm sure if you're a follower of the Gaming Gang, if you watch the live streams at all, you'll hear me talk about how, in my opinion, dragons should be a really big deal in your fantasy role-playing games. And I get it. You know, people talk Dungeons and Dragons. They're like, well, you know, dragons are in the name, so you should have a lot of dragons. That is not my opinion. I don't look at it that way. And the reality is, that's not how the rules were written. That's not how D&D was created. Dragons were supposed to be a massive, huge deal when you encountered them. And to me, a lot of these tables are going to bring back that wonder that you find when player characters encounter a dragon. So we've got all these different random tables for the dragon's personality, motivations, treasure that it's got, allies and enemies. So there's a lot going on. This is actually one of the longer zines in this book, all devoted to dragons. As far as production quality, artwork throughout is pretty solid in the old school vein. The paper stock is very nice. This should hold up pretty well to repeated use. But as you can see, it's just a lot of tables, which is an OSR thing. And I got to say, a lot of this is really cool stuff. Is this necessarily going to be for everyone? No, that's not going to be the case. I will say that this will easily fit right on the shelf next to your old school essentials. Right? It's the right size. You can use this with OSC Advanced Fantasy as well, very easily. All right, so that is Axian Library. Let's swing on over to the other camera. I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Personally, I could see getting a lot of use from Axian Library if I were running an old school Renaissance role-playing game, if I were running old school essentials or some retro clone or what have you, I would dig utilizing this a lot. Some of my players might not. So two of the zines may not go over so well with your players if they don't like to roll with the dice, so to speak, right? Some people, they take their characters really seriously, and they've got, these backstories that they've spent weeks crafting, which is not an OSR thing. It is a new wave thing. But if you've got players like that, they will absolutely not like having to roll on a table to find out what their character was doing because they couldn't make it to the last session, or they have a replacement character and all right, here's some story beats that you're going to utilize. Now, does that, I mean, if something they don't like comes up, you can always have them re-rolled on the table, but still. The other three, the two alternate methods of magic, both divine and arcane, I think is really well done. Kind of similar to my approach with my magic in old school fantasy role-playing games, which I have to mention, I got an email one time from somebody asking me, why do all these old school role-playing games use a Vancian magic system when none of the stories in Appendix N in the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide uses Vancian magic? And I thought, well, the Jack Vance Dying Earth stories do. It's what's called Vancian magic. But I'm not a huge fan of Vancian magic in OSR games either. So I do like the alternate approaches as well. And the zine devoted to dragons is nice and a great way to create some very unique adversaries for your player characters. All in all, production quality is nice. Artwork is cool. This should find itself on your shelf along with your other OSR supplements and rule sets. And I can definitely give you my recommendation. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Axian Library an 8 out of 10. I like it. It's not going to be for everybody, but I definitely enjoyed reading through it, and I could see having a lot of fun with a bunch of these random tables inside. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy life to watch this video. And, of course, until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, that's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.